Welcome to Friends, Life, and Ministry. Real talk from four pastors with over 200 years of ministry experience.
Hey, welcome to Friends, Life, and Ministry. My brother Steve is at a meeting with Layden Ford out in North Carolina. Layden has been a mentor with him for over 40 years, and Layden's 95. So, an amazing friend and amazing investment in my brother Steve's life. But John Van Dinter is with us from Stockholm and Bill Ankerberg from the Seattle area. And today we're going to talk about trends we've seen in culture, in church movements, in the church over the last 50 years. And this is obviously something where we could talk about lots of different ones. We'll probably talk about one or two today, and they might be positive ones or negative ones, but we'd encourage all of you watching to be students of your time. What's going on in your era? And are there things you could learn from the past that would help you with that? Bill, when you reflect on that question, what comes to your mind about trends we're seeing in the last 50 years?
We were talking a minute ago, and John was mentioning the similarity to 50 years ago, because that'd be about 1975 in California. The Jesus People movement was really taking hold. People were being baptized all over the place in the Pacific Ocean. The start of the Calvary Chapel movement. Music was changing. Music was being affected a lot more by kind of a Christian rock kind of a style, not a traditional church style. So 50 years ago, there were a lot of changes happening, which have developed over the years. And now we're seeing today some similarities. If you look at the statistics, you'll see that millennials are showing up in a disproportionate number in churches in North America. And the fascinating thing to me is in these younger people who are coming to church, many for the first time, there are more males than females. So people are coming back to church or coming to church for the first time in unprecedented numbers. But certainly the size of churches has changed in 50 years. Because 50 years ago, I remember going to First Baptist Church in Dallas, where Dr. W.A. Criswell was pastor. And in those days, everybody knew that that was the biggest church in Texas. And today, I don't think people could name the top 10 churches in Texas, because there's so many large churches, and a lot of them are kind of under the radar. People don't know they're there. I mean, certainly people know like a Joel Osteen, or they know Gateway Church in Dallas, some of those places, but not everybody even can keep track of the mega church. Is typically defined as a church of 2,000 or more on a Sunday morning. And there's a lot of those churches all over the country right now. So the large churches have, I think, been one of the most significant changes that I've seen. John, what would you say?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said. You say, predominantly among the new generation that comes to church, we talk about men. I remember reading books and seeing articles, reading articles. I mean, in maybe about 15, 20 years ago, where the church was accused of having no message for a man. And that it was, it was for the needy, for the weak, for the people that needed support rather, or counseling, or something like that. And that's why men would not come to church. There was no challenge for men. So, do you feel that the message has been adjusted, or something else has changed that make now men come?
Well, there are churches like that. I know our church, Cornerstone Church in Chandler, Arizona, intentionally tries to focus more on speaking to men. I think a lot of us actually grew up in, like when I started as a pastor, every church, 2 out of 3 people in the church were women. So you had to speak to women. You had to address them and their thoughts and needs if you were going to try to have a healthy church. So now a lot of churches have moved a little more probably to be speaking more to males. Do you think that happens in Sweden at all?
I have to go. I didn't think of it in that way, so I
Yeah.
have to think of that a little bit more. Maybe I can come back in a few
I
Okay.
minutes.
I know,
Mhm.
and the recent study in England showed that among among the younger generation that there was a quadrupling of attendance among that generation, and that it was characterized more by men. You know, sometimes I think those are sociological trends. There are other
Yeah.
times where I think it's God answering prayer.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have recognized how 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 bad men have been getting, and have been praying about that. And you know, leaders have raised up that are speaking more to men and to the issues that men have. And I think back 50 years ago with Jesus people and all the other things that happened, you know, you can try to explain that all by sociology. I think a lot of that was people praying, people that had prayed that God would do something. And it
Yeah.
looked so desperate back then. I mean, it looked back then for a lot of people of you know, my parents' generation, like, well, young people are just totally lost, and they stand for nothing. They're just in utter rebellion. And then in the midst of that, there was this strange rebellion that happened, a rebellion of becoming Christ followers and cleaning up your life and living in a different way. And so the idea that that could happen again would be really amazing.
Yeah. And it does seem like we see some of those same signs of that's a great way to think of it as an answer to prayer.
John,
Yeah,
thoughts you have?
it almost must be like that because I think like I mean we're still fighting here to get more women that preach the gospel, more women that are being acknowledged in their ministries, and at the same time we talk about the lack of of the kind of message or the kind of approach that appeals to man. You know, men are more used in the church because of their entrepreneurial kind of spirit or business kind of experiences, but not necessarily spiritually. If you compare to the ones who are leading different ministries, I would say there's many women that spend much more time in serving God in their ministry than men do. So yeah, I also hold on to the prayer item. Maybe we should do that much more.
You know, 50 years ago, um, when that was happening, and it was in a lot of ways unexplainable, the Jesus people,
Mm.
Calvary Chapel. I mean, it wasn't like they had this big plan figured out, but there were churches and ministry and movements that were willing to move into it. And then there were churches and ministry and movements that almost stood opposed to it. And a lot of the mainline churches sort of stood opposed to it.
Yeah.
Some of the fundamental churches, and they didn't experience as much of that wave of people that were coming to faith. And I would say to you, if you're listening and you're in ministry, one of the things is you might not have it all figured out, but could you step in? Could you try something that um, would help connect with people that are coming to faith, particularly if God's working first with men, with men. I know one thing at the Aspen Grove Network that I'm part of. We've had at our Woodridge site a boom of different men's groups that have sprung up. And one of the crazy parts of it, and I live in Minnesota, so we get serious winter, is all winter long, a bunch of these guys will go on cold plunge and cut a
Sorry,
hole in the
they will go
cold,
on.
cold plunge. They will go and cut a hole in the ice and spend 5 to 7 minutes
Oh boy.
in the water. And share about God while they're doing that. And
Wow.
you go, well, why? Why in the world would you do that? Well,
Well,
there's
because
sort of
someone is standing on the ice, and in the same time as they jump in, they say, "In the name of the Father and the Son
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Holy
You
Spirit."
you would think so, but they don't get all under. They just they sit in the cold water, a cold plunge. I mean, not they're cold plunges, but this is a really cold plunge. And when you get out, it's like you're still cold. But I think part of it is that sense of returning to adventure and to commitment and to I'm strong, those kind of qualities. I
Yeah.
could picture the early apostles doing that, just going, yeah, we're sold out. We're workmen that are sold out to something that's significant and important. And so if you're leading ministry, this would be a time to try to find those people and find
Yeah.
what ideas do they have, and could you be a door opener to those ideas? My brother Steve, as I mentioned, is out with Layden Ford, and Layden was an evangelist with the Billy Graham Association. And there's this famous picture one time where they were having an event, an evangelism event, and all the people coming in were kind of fairly well dressed, short hair, and then these people that we would describe as hippies came in. They sat right down in the front on the floor, and Layden got up out of his seat in his suit and went and sat next to them on the floor. And did he take heat for that? There were so many people that were angry at him, but he just said, they're coming to a meeting to hear about God. And I want to let them know that I meet them with love first.
Mm.
Just powerful example from the past. Hopefully we'll be open in that way too.
When I
Um,
was in college, a couple of my roommates did an experiment. They wanted to see how our family of churches, converged churches, would react to people like that. So they dressed up like hippies and just went into 4 different churches over a month just to see how people would react to them when they came into the church building and stuff. And it was interesting. Most of them were just kind of, I would say, they didn't quite know what to do about it, so they just kind of ignored it. But it was fascinating to kind of see this little study of how the churches that we were going to would react to people like that coming in.
yeah, and now today, John, if you think of from the past, what might be things we might see today that if God is at work in that way? What were things you experienced back in Holland 50 years ago or saw in Sweden?
Oh, well, there was you. Let's focus on Holland, because I came to Sweden in the 80s. But in Holland, I think the search for community, belonging, uh, purpose, and meaning. I mean, all of these things that people were like fighting for through demonstrations and stuff like that. Um, I mean, even this whole swing that you see now against governmental form and expressions, or even abuse, may I say that, in our world today. That's why people go back to the streets. Also, like it's not because there's things happening that are uh, reflecting some of the things that were happening in the 60s and the 70s. And people start responding, and I think that's a good thing because people look for more, and so those kind of things. I'm just like, hey, this is 50 years ago. Do we realize that those things happened 50 years ago? Do we see what is happening now? And so the church should be this open place where Christ invites people from being foreigners to becoming friends and children. That's the place that God wants to create among us, and that's what we have to focus on what people search and what they need, and not on our convictions which are often political convictions.
One of our guys in America, a young guy, Charlie Kirk, who was killed, was a young man who had a significant effect on other college-age young people. And a lot of his interesting message to me was primarily, I always thought he was more political, but the more you look at it, he was always very Christian, very clear in his testimony. And after he died, his wife said, well, Jesus said from the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. And so I say to the man who shot my husband, I forgive you, because that's what Christ did,
Just
and
amazing.
I thought, well, what a great example of, in a hard place, following what Christ left as an example for us.
When I talk to people, talk to pastors and leaders, a lot of them are praying, but in one way, they're praying either for success, that their church will grow, and they want to reach people, but that their church will grow, or survival, that their church will get more people just so they can keep on surviving. And I
Yeah,
just would tell you that I think we need more leaders that are praying for the next generation and are opening doors to what God shows those young leaders to do as they come to faith, and how they can create the next wave of ministry that will go on. Hey guys, this has been a great conversation. Thanks. I hope it was a benefit to all of you. Listen, drop us a note and let us know what you think. Thanks for listening today. Bye.
I
Thanks for listening or watching. We would love to hear your questions.